Hey guys, it's Doc. I just wanted to do a video talking about the other half, well, the other 2/3 really, of Strangehaven by Gary Spencer Millage. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright guys, so this is the cover to Strangehaven issue 16. I actually read all the way from issue 7 through issue 18, which is the last official comic book issue of the series. So I'm going to give you an overview of 7 all the way through 18. And really what it is, it's a mix of Twin Peaks, like I've said before, and it's its own little town. It's its own little eccentric things. I grew up in a small town in Mississippi, and everybody knew everybody, and it just had it's got a different vibe than growing up in, say, Memphis or Philadelphia or another urban area that you just can't put a finger on. There's a lot of times that it feels like something nefarious is going on, and it's really not. There's really not anything dark or mysterious going on. It's just simply, that's how small town life is. But as issue 7 picked up, Alex, the main character, comes back from a sabbatical, we'll say, a trip that he took to kind of clear his head and figure out what happened with Janie. And along the way, he runs into Surfer Steve, who looks a lot like Joe Diffie to me, if you ask me, from the art. But he learns and gets a ride back into town and learns a little bit more about Strangehaven from Surfer Steve, learns more about the eccentric nature of the town and the people in the town, and how they all have their own agendas. And it turns out that the affair between Peter and Susie, and Peter's wife Beverly knowing about the affair, takes a different turn. So there's a murder in the town, and then somebody else ends up dead as well, but that doesn't look like it's a murder, it looks more like a suicide. So how do you go about stitching all these things together? That's where Strangehaven really shines, is because to me, as I read the story, as I read, closer to issue 16, 17, and 18, which I just finished a few minutes ago, the story seemed to pick up speed. It picked up its pace. And to me, that tells me that Gary Spencer Millage felt more confident in what he was doing. It's just like any other type of story. When you begin that story, when you begin creating these characters, creating this world, creating all of these situations in which these characters find themselves, eventually, not only if you continue the story long enough, not only do you become a better writer, but these characters begin to flesh themselves out. There's always been writers that are talking about what the characters have to say to them. Not what I made the character say when I wrote this dialogue. Not what I chose for the character to act, or how he did, or how she reacted to what happened. But instead, they always say, this is what happened to the characters. They grow and they become their own. And that's how Strangehaven ends, with a much more expansive Gary Spencer Millage, and a much more expansive understanding of the characters. Although in the very last issue I did read something that happened with Alex, and you're just kind of like, oh God, he's been through this once, and then he finally got back on solid ground, and then boom, here we go again. It gives closure to some characters, like Mrs. McReady, who was one of the village people that we met early on in the series, actually in the first issue, that kind of gave Alex a place to stay with the Airbnb. It gives her story closure that you really wouldn't expect, but at the same time, it's very fulfilling and it's a natural thing. See, that's what I love about comics that flow in a natural way. A lot of the problem that I've had with Spider-Man lately is that Peter Parker is not being Peter Parker. I don't know if it's a Zeb Wells issue, I don't know if it's an editorial mandate issue, but the Peter Parker that we're reading about in Amazing Spider-Man right now is not the correct characterization of Peter Parker. And that's not got anything to do with me being older or any way that I feel that Peter Parker should be. It's not that we feel these characters have a certain personality. They grow to have certain personalities over the years. You can only do so many things relationship-wise with Peter Parker. If you're true to the character, if you're true to who the character has been for all of these years, you can't all of a sudden turn Peter Parker from being straight to gay. It wouldn't work. And why would it not work? Not because anybody is homophobic. Not because writers aren't afraid to take challenges with the characters, but it's just simply not in his nature. That's what I think a lot of people have lost in the world, and I'll jump on my soapbox for just a minute and then get off, but I think a lot of people have lost flexibility. They're extremely rigid. If you don't agree with my point of view, then you must be wrong. And I don't really see that life should be that way. There are a few hard and fast and solid rules that you have to follow in life. You know, unless somebody's trying to kill you first, murder is bad. If they're trying to kill you first, it's self-defense. And that might be what saves you in court. But just going out and murdering somebody, going out and taking another's life, just because that's what you want to do, that will always be bad. Hurting other people in emotional or physical ways in which they are unaware or they're unable to express their displeasure with, that's always unequivocally wrong. Twisting people's words, creating false narratives, that's always wrong. And that's what I like about Strangehaven, is that these characters don't change for the sake of changing. They change because they grow. They grow as a character, and they become more nuanced. And that's what a lot of independent books, modern-day Marvel and DC books, they're missing that nuance from the character. They're not missing the character. Spider-Man will always be in Spider-Man. But is he true to the character that he has been since 1963? That's why a lot of people thoroughly enjoy Ultimate Spider-Man right now. Because it's more boiled down to who the character has been all these years, and a truer representation of who Peter Parker, Mary Jane, and the world in which they live is. So if you really like an awesome story, if you really like well done, and let me say this as well, the artwork from Gary Spencer Millage, not only the writing, but the artwork itself, has grown. His caricatures in issue 1 were very caricature-like. On the other hand, he painted all the covers for the 18 issues, and his art style from issue 12, at the end of 12, towards the beginning of 13, all the way through the end of the series, the line work inside bears the similar artwork. It's not painted, but it's very detailed, and it's not something that Gary Spencer Millage of 1995 would have been able to complete successfully. But the Gary Spencer Millage of 2005, of 2006, was able to not only create something really beautiful, but also give these characters life. because you can look at the art and tell who is who. A lot of artists, and I'm not calling anybody out in particular, but there were certain points at The Walking Dead that Charlie Adler's art was hard to follow because you weren't sure exactly who was speaking. You could try to follow that narrative, but there were times where I got lost. I wasn't exactly sure who was talking. I worked very hard to understand that. But at the same time, it took that work, and I had to put that work in. Here, you don't have that issue. You know exactly that it's Alex, or Janie, or Dor, or Sergeant Clark, or any of the myriad characters that you've met in this series. And it just kind of tugs at the heartstrings. Because, in a way, it's a very personal story. Not that it happened to Gary Millage. Not that it was anything that actually became of anybody in his life. But you can tell that he's grown to love these characters and put in this work. And he hopes at the end of the day that you too will become invested in these characters. Through his artwork, through his writing, through the selflessness of self-publication, through all of the hard labor that he's put into this one book, to Strangehaven. It's similar to Dave Sim and Cerebus. Say what you will about Dave Sim, say what you will about Cerebus. It lost its way towards a certain point, but he was focused on what he was doing. The artwork never really changed. Cerebus looked practically the same from issue 1 to issue 300. So you just have to go into this with an open mind. Go into it looking at a world that is a little bit different than the one today. Because at this point, where you're talking 20 to 30 years ago. And it's set in a British town, so some of the dialect and some of the English is the King's English rather than Americanized English. But hey, crack open a dictionary, look it up on Google, copy and paste and put it in Google and have it translated into modern English. Without the different dialects, without the different speech patterns that are coming from these other people and these other cultures. Make it more palatable to you. But at the same time, respect what has come before. Respect the time and the effort that he took to create these dialects to sound properly. It's not always easy to write characters that are not straight Southern or just straight American English, I should say, that say phrases in plain English. But to do that, to have that understanding of culture, of narrative, of how these things can create and change and shape, that really gave me a lot of respect for what Gary did with this title. And I do have some of the episodes that came in the Meanwhile magazines, so I'll definitely check those out. I don't know that I'll review those on the channel, but if you've never had a chance to check this out, I managed to luck up on it over at Nene's Comics in Millington. I've talked about them a lot of times before, and Frank helped me finish this series off. I think I found a bunch of them in the dollar bin over at Comics and Collectibles, which is my local LCS that I visit every Wednesday morning. But Frank was able to, he actually had a whole run of all 18 issues. The thing is, I had already captured, I think, 6 of the 18, so I didn't really have a need for those 6 other issues. But he found all those issues in the books that he had bought over the years. And they're all in really great shape. So I was fortunate to read them almost as they had come off the shelf. Maybe a little ding here and there, a little dent, but not, overly loved reader copies. These aren't 1.0s. These are closer to, 8.0s, 8.5s, maybe even some 9s. But anyway, to get back to what I was talking about for just a moment, if you like independent books, and you like strangeness, and you like murder mysteries and secret societies and cast of hundreds. Not really. Cast more of tens. But, of interesting characters whose lives seem to be much more than day-to-day BS that we put up with each and every day in our own lives. It still gives you that feeling of escapism, that opportunity to step outside your own self and your own world and your own box and read something that could be more. Then definitely check out Strangehaven. Give it an opportunity. Give it a chance to grow on you, just like it grew on me. The first 6 issues were kind of slow. It took a minute to pull it all together, to figure out where the narrative was heading. But once I figured out where it was heading, I've sat down and read 7 through 12, and then sat down last night and read 13, 14, and 15, and then sat down and read the last 3 books tonight. It sucked me in. It really sucked me in. So I would have to say that I would have to give this series definitely an A, for ingenuity, for storytelling, for the narrative. And I hope you guys get a chance to check it out. Unfortunately, as far as I know, it's not anywhere digitally like Comixology or Kindle. Some of the Meanwhile episodes are available digitally in those magazines. But as far as I know, the actual series itself, you'll have to go search it out in dollar boxes. But hey, isn't that the fun that we have of searching stuff up in dollar bins? So guys, thanks for giving me the opportunity to share another video with you. I hope you enjoyed this on Strangehaven. It was a really great book. I was ecstatic to actually get all 18 issues of it for, I think it was like $15, something like that, when it was all said and done. So I'm really happy for that, and I hope you guys catch me in the next video. If you haven't done so, please like and subscribe. Let's keep growing this community, and have a great night.